That being said, let's start our discussion for today first with um, with a call about, or I'm sorry, a talk about multiple offers, since several of us have been dealing with multiple offers.
Carl's on.
Yeah, I'm on.
Oh,
It's just I'm on my phone, so unless you want to just stare at the bottom of my face, I didn't turn the camera on until I could turn my computer back on.
We appreciate that. That's nice. That's very thoughtful.
You know, just being considerate.
So let's talk about multiple offers. Who wants to start? So let's talk about basics of a multiple offer. What does that typically mean right at the beginning we're expecting to happen in a multiple offer situation?
go high or go home.
Let's be more specific, just for pretend none of us know what real estate means.
I mean, the fact that you know that there's multiple offers on the table is helpful to even begin with.
Yep.
It's what?
I said it's helpful to know that there's multiple offers on the table to begin with. I mean, they don't have to tell you that, do they?
No, they don't, but it's to their advantage to get the most for them.
Exactly.
So from an offer standpoint and prepping our client, what are we going to talk about as far as how we're going to think about structuring a multiple offer?
So I start out by saying what we know is this, there's other offers on the table. So you need to think about that when you make your offer, because you might only have one chance at it and you need to make it as strong as it can be.
I tell them what would upset you to lose the house at? Like what price? If you lost a house at a certain price, what price would that be that you would be upset that you lost it?
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
I feel like with multiples, everyone's like, well, what do you think I should offer? And I always say, like, offer the best price that you know if you don't get it, you did all you can do. Because now's not the time to get a deal.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So let's extrapolate that a little bit, Stephanie, because that's a really good point. Why is it really important to use language like that versus maybe something else you could say?
Because if you give them a number and then they didn't get it based on what you said, they can blame you for it.
Exactly what I'm looking for. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
No, I can't really hear. Y'all are going to have to look at the side of my head because I have to put the phone up to my ear.
Sorry.
I think there's a little bit of, I don't know, it kind of sounds like, it's not saying, but it's situational dependent too, in the sense that, like, for instance, if you did like comps on it and you think like you're really close, like you may be able to like go super high knowing that it's probably not going to appraise if you're using like a VA, you know what I'm saying? So I think for each thing, there's like something different. And I don't know that it's always necessarily, you know, I guess that's what I tell them too, is that there's different ways to attack this. You know, and we all know like doing things like putting more money towards the DD versus earnest money or flip-flopping them can help you out. I just think it's very situation dependent for each case.
I also think,
Go ahead.
I've lost in multiple offers before, not because of purchase price. We've had the highest purchase price, but they wanted to push closing out further. Or I mean, I think there's other things that can go into multiple offers other than purchase price.
Yep.
For sure.
That's a really good point. I usually ask when we're in multiples, like, hey, is there anything that your client needs that could make this work a little bit more for, you know, for their situation? So,
What's your seller's time frame?
yeah,
Kind of thing.
yeah. So that's a good point, Felicia, because we had one where the seller wanted to close as soon as possible, but then needed to stay in the house. And that's what won it. We're like, well, hey, we'll let the seller take seller possession for a week. And they were like, okay, done. You know, so awesome point.
Take the extra, ask the extra question, find out what's going on situationally with them. In a multiple offer situation, you are looking for every single advantage you can possibly get to make your offer stand out over someone else's. And 100%, it's not always the case that it's just about the purchase price. Very good point. Go ahead.
That's exactly what just happened with us yesterday. most people think that they would want more due diligence, but these people actually wanted more earnest money because we're not closing until the second week of December because that's when they're PCSing. And they were worried about like someone backing out at the last minute, and then like they just had their house off the market for 2 months and now they're leaving. So they actually wanted more earnest money. And I had asked him, like what Tiffany said, what do they want? And he told me, so that's what we went in with.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Ask those
Another,
questions.
I'd say another one is the type of loan too, because everybody knows like around here, DA's pretty much the majority, and sometimes that's a harder one to appraise. So that might be a tactic too, switching over to a conventional.
Yep. You have to be very careful with VA and multiple offer situations because the borrower, your client, the buyer, has extra protection if it doesn't appraise. And a lot of times, the reason people use a VA loan is because they want that 100% financing option.
Yep.
And if the baseline of multiple offers is expect to pay over list price, we don't know how much. If you're paying over list price anytime, you're always risking it not appraising. So you have to make sure that the people understand that and they're set to bring that extra money to the table if they want to make it happen.
Yeah, that's what I had to explain to my buyer.
If they're using a VA loan, make it clear. Like, hey, they're using a VA loan, but they've got the money. They can make the difference up. They just want to use their VA loan option. Make sure you explain that to the agent. There's no reason. The VA says they're not going to, that you're protected if it doesn't appraise. It doesn't say you can't pay the extra money to get the house.
Right.
So make sure you understand that and are able to communicate that effectively, that your clients understand that. And as long as they're in a position to pay the extra out of pocket, that you communicate that if they're using that VA type. With any loan type, obviously, but especially with the VA type, where there's the extra level of protection for the buyer.
Yeah, I had that happen on Saturday. My guy, we were in multiples and he was VA, and I said, listen, the one thing you do have to know is if, we already know that there's an over asking on the table. So whatever you offer, just be prepared that if it doesn't appraise, you'll have to bring that difference to the table, so consider that when you decide what you're going to offer as well.
100%. Any other comments on that?
I mean, I kind of feel like with VA, they usually just drop the price though.
Yeah, but you can't assume that they're going to do that.
No, I know, but as long as like the client doesn't think they're going to have to, because
right. Take
but
that
that's what we're saying. That's the reason why they might not, take that offer in a multiple offer situation, is because of that. Like,
Oh, the seller won't take the offer, you mean, because it's a VA?
right.
Yeah.
They would be more inclined to go towards a conventional loan.
Right,
Also, VA is a little harder on inspections and appraisal than a conventional loan is.
right.
So just things like that to keep in mind. So if they are determined to use that loan product, just make sure that you have the conversation with them so they understand what could happen in the scenario and that they're willing to deal with it, so you can communicate that to the agent. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's all. So what are the other things? So obviously purchase price, we're expecting to be over. The language is fantastic that we have talked about. What amount would you be disappointed that you knew somebody paid for it if you didn't offer that? Multiple offers, it's not a bid situation. There's not going to be back and forth. If they say multiple offers, you need to go with your highest, best offer right now.
One time, one shot, one kill. Yeah,
That's all you got.
that's right.
And we talked about purchase price, obviously. Dates are very important. Ask about the closing date. Be as flexible as you can. It's about getting the house, not about being immediately happy in the short term. It's about achieving your long-term goal, right? Be willing to be inconvenienced for a little while if it gets you the house that you want, right? And then also give as much extra protection as you can to the seller in an event to get them to pick your offer. Shorter DD. Instead of 3 weeks, do 2 weeks, right? Do 10 days if you think you can turn it around that quick. Anything to give your client an advantage. Obviously, make sure they understand what that entails, and then make sure the second you go under contract that you're letting the closing manager know we need a rush on all this stuff stat, right? And that you need to let the lender know we need that appraisal yesterday. Get on that appraisal right now because we had to go really short on this. Okay, that's where you got to drive the ship and not assume somebody else can do that, especially in a situation where you're shortening up the timeline to give you an advantage. Don't turn an advantage into a disadvantage by not planning and then executing, right? So you got to be really on top of those things. And then, of course, flip as much of that money as you can to due diligence, unless you've got a client like Stephanie, seller, that that wanted more protection on the back end. Ask, like, hey, more due diligence be effective for them? 99 times out of 100, that's going to be a yes, a big yes. If your folks are nervous about that, make it the same out of pocket. Just pull money from the earnest money and flip it to due diligence. So $200,000 house, typically you're going to do $500 and $2,000. We'll do $1,500 and $1,000.
Can't hear him.
So it's still, you do $1,500 and $1,000. So it's still $2,500 out of pocket, but you're putting more up front. You're investing more. They say buyer beware. That's the truth. That's why it's a risk to put that money up front, but that's what makes it more appealing to the sellers. Again, in a multiple offer situation, that's what we're talking about, not just any. Because it's about.
So when they say to you, "What do you think I should offer?" and I say, "This is what we know. You need to go in with what you are most comfortable paying." Being upset without losing the house. And they say, "Well, what do you think we should offer?" I said, "Well, we already know that there's an over asking on the table, so start there." "Well, what do you think that we should offer?" And I'm like, okay, well, at that point when they're like, do you honestly, I would say, and then I said, I would make your due diligence on the higher end. I would, make the closing cost or the, if you're in a multiple offer situation, I would not suggest closing costs. That's a stronger offer. But like when it comes for them asking you exactly the number that they should offer, and they've asked you 3 times, how do you answer that question without?
I would say in that situation, I would say, well, what amount are you comfortable with letting the house go? Like, at what price point would you not be comfortable with losing the home? So if the home's listed at 220, let's say, if the home goes for 250, are you okay with losing it at that? Or if the home goes for 230, are you okay with losing it at that? And put it back on them, so then at least the number that they come up with is the one that they felt comfortable with saying that's the highest I'll go. That if it sells for more than that, I'm comfortable with losing it.
So like,
hey Doug, I'm sorry, I gotta hop off. My people just pulled in.
Happy closing.
Thank you. Bye.
So like my lady yesterday or Sunday, obviously if they're pre-approved for X, you can't go over X, right? Mm-hmm. So the house was listed for 145. She's pre-approved for 145. So that's kind of like where you are. So I told her, I said, there's other offers on the table. You need to go in with what you're most comfortable paying. And, and then she came back and she's like, and I told her up front, I said, stronger offer if you go higher on the due diligence and take care of the closing costs. So she called me and she's like, well, I want to go 142 with closing or whatever she said it was. And then she's like, no, never mind. I want to go 145 with no closing costs. So she was able to make that decision. But at that point you can't go over asking because
they don't have
it,
yeah.
So
well, sometimes a lender will just put a number on there that they ask for also. So you could always ask the lender if there's any wiggle room in their pre-approval.
100%. And we talked about that too, Janine, if you remember, making sure that the number on the letter is actually their max. When in the census it was, of course, but just always knowing what the max is.
Because sometimes the client will just ask for 150 per se, and that's what the lender will put on there. But really, they can go up to 300.
Right. That's a good point. But given that,
I gotta jump off.
Okay, good luck. Have fun.
All right, see y'all.
Given that the letter is accurate and they can't go above what's on the letter, then mean, you really have no choice but to max out the offer and then go as high as you can on due diligence and be very realistic with the other terms.
I mean, she's a single young mom teacher, so I mean, I know that was definitely what she said, that she's not
You got it.
yet.
That's
I don't know yet. We don't know. We're still waiting.
We got to take that aspect out of it. That's overthinking it. It doesn't matter if she's married or teaches or runs a casino. The letter said 145. That's all that matters. Don't bring other factors into it that have nothing to do with it. 145. That's the only thing that matters. And then if you say, well, did the lender say you're qualified for more and this is what you asked for, or is this it? Okay, and now you know which way to go. And then, you know, it's like putting together a puzzle. And then what else can we do, you know, to make it better? But yeah, that's a good point. Anything else? Because, I mean, we've talked about a lot of the basics. Are we missing anything? Tiffany, can you think of anything?
There is a time that he's doing this.
I don't think so. I mean, we talked about dates and we talked about price.
Closing
and,
costs.
Yeah, closing costs. Obviously, I mean, I wouldn't really be asking for closing
Yeah.
costs.
And
We
then-
didn't really talk about that too much, so let's just make sure we make a point of that. You got to set the expectation that closing costs are off the table. in a
Yep.
multi-family situation. And here's why. Because what do we do to get closing costs added in typically?
I can't hear him.
What do we do to get closing costs added in?
We reduce the purchase price.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I know what you're saying. We're talking about the same thing, Felicia. We're just saying it different ways. You typically pay more for the house, right?
Pay more
Yeah,
and
right.
Seller what you want.
Right. So in a multiple situation, you know that you're already going to overpay for the house, and then you're going to overpay even more if you're adding closing costs in, right? So now what are we looking at happening?
Not appraising.
100%. And you got to make sure that you explain it that way to get that off the table.
So if they want closing cost of $5,000, they need to go 10 grand over.
Yeah, and you can't do that. 'cause
And you
it's
can't
not
do
gonna-
that. Yeah. So forget the closing costs.
I think something important to note, not in multiples, but like with your client, is if you offer more to ask for closing costs, like they need to still be prepared to pay some closing costs
Yeah.
in case it doesn't appraise.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's a really tricky, and I know we all do it, I've done it, but it can be a scary situation if you're offering over asking in hopes that it appraises. Because if it doesn't, then are your clients going to be able to go through with it? Because I've been in one situation where that was kind of.
So then what, I mean, and how do you
No,
suggest?
No, we're going to table that. That's not the discussion we're having, and I want to stay on topic for the purpose of what we're doing. So
Oh, sorry.
it's okay. It's a good point. I'm going to make a note of it. We'll circle back and make closing costs another topic that we'll talk about. Hey,
Okay.
that's why I love having these conversations, because it brings up more topics, but I want to make sure that we stay more focused.
So would another aspect of this be, though, also dealing with the other agent? Like trying to build that relationship and the rapport with them early on?
100%. And I talk about that a lot. So extrapolate that a little bit, Charles. It's a good point to bring up.
Yeah, so like recently, like a client who I've been dealing with, Marvin, like Doug knows about this. He's in a situation where his financing is extremely tight and there's very strict parameters on what's allowed. So everybody that I'm calling to make an offer with, I talk to that agent usually right after we look at the house, and I try to build some rapport with them. So I'll go online, I'll find out who the listing agent is, and then I go and I creep on them and find them on Facebook. And I'll go ahead and I'll see if there's like anything at all that I have in common with them or somebody in common. Like I try to find something so when I'm talking to them, I can be like, hey, you know, John Smith agent, reaching out to you because I showed your property. It's a beautiful option. I've got a client. He's very interested. We've been looking for a home now for almost a year. He's a single dad. He's a nurse. His kids are up at his parents' house, and we're really trying to find something. Also, I noticed that you're a big fan of, you know, hunting, whatever. I saw that, you know, together on this deal to get this done for my client and to help you guys sell this house, and just try to build that rapport as much as I can, knowing that we're probably going to be outbid, but to try to at least have something.
So my question in regards to that, just being a rookie, how much information about your client do you divulge to the other side to make them win you over? Like,
I would say if I can make it a
fine line of how much you're allowed to disclose about your client's situation.
I mean, you're not given any financial information that they hadn't given you the okay to share.
Yeah, I just give them the sob story. You know, it's, you know, I'm the, you know, we need help. You know, he needs everything possible. He's got a broken leg. You know, he's dying. You know, whatever it is, just to try to, you know, have that sad story. Like, please help me. You know, the puppy dog eyes is what I'm trying to give.
I'm on board with that. What I would say is just real quick, Tiffany, just don't put any of that in writing.
Yeah, no, this is a phone call.
I know you're not, but it's just all a conversation that you're having with somebody. That's all. Go ahead, Tiffany.
Well, but speaking of writing, I have also had it be beneficial. Have your client write a letter as to why they want the house, what they want.
Same, done that.
I mean, that really, I told my one client, I said, include a family picture so they can see you. I'm like, whatever you want to do.
With the offer?
Yeah.
Same, did the same thing. Yep.
And it worked.
Really?
Yes, like my clients got their big beach house in Carolina Beach that way. Christy Dory. There was multiples, and I said, write a letter about how much you want your family to be in this house, and you want to raise your kids here, and what it means.
I've had 2 clients do that, and I'm happy to share them if y'all want to see an example.
Please do share it with us.
Okay.
So we can use it. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
You can just be very careful with those. Okay. Technically, they're not. I know it happens a lot, but the real estate commission is not a fan of it, just to be honest with you. So just be very careful with it. Okay. And you know, you can't help it if your client asks you to do it. Just don't put anything in writing that says, hey, I'm suggesting that you do this.
Yeah, no.
Okay. You know what I mean? Just paper trails are important. We're not doing anything wrong, but we're also not trying to lead the client. Okay. If it's something that they're interested in doing, you can coach them on how to do it. Okay. Just be careful with it. Okay. That's all. But yeah, they can be very effective. And in a lot of instances, if a home really means something to a seller, which it obviously doesn't always, but if it really means something to a seller, they want it to go to somebody that they can relate to, you know, that they feel is going to take care of it. You know, we raised our 4 kids here. We want somebody else to raise their 4 kids there. You know where I'm coming from. So use that to your advantage. Just be smart about it.
I mean, I always make sure that the first thing I do is call that list agent and find out as much as I can. What can you tell me? What's the situation? Are there any offers on the table? Because like this lady called on Friday or on Saturday and was like, I want to see this house. Can I see it on Friday? And I called the list agent. He's like, we're going to be under contract on Monday. I was like, well, can you be here Monday and see the house? And so, you know, knowing that there was a multiple situation, we had to hurry up and go quickly. But I mean, then with the other guy on Friday, I mean, I called the list agent and she said, you know, they're getting ready. They got a lot of offers on the table, but if you want to move your showing up till 9 a.m, we'll wait till 9 a.m, you know? And so being able to just build that relationship with the list agent first, because obviously they're going to want to present all offers. Mm-hmm. And if you can buy your client a little bit more time, you know, I think that's important too.
100% it is. And that's something that you're not going to know unless you pick up the phone and make the call and reach out to the agent.
And like with my cash buyer, the list agent had no idea that I was even showing the house. And so when I called her with the offer, she's like, oh, well, we're in verbal negotiation. And I was like, okay, well, here's the terms of my client's offer. And I texted it to her. And she said, how soon can you get this in writing? Because I'll present this to my client. I said, I'm going to the office now. And I was really scared because she told me that the other offer on the table was a designated dual agency offer. And I was like, oh, great. They're going to go to and keep it in-house. But they chose us. So that agent said, well done for working so hard. Because obviously if it's not in writing, it doesn't,
That's nice,
you know,
yeah.
so you got to figure it out.
So let's, just to recap, multiple offers, highest first, come strong, due diligence high, take from earnest if you have to, talk to the agent, find out what the seller is looking for timeline-wise, and be flexible, right? Shorter DD period if possible. Don't be asking for the moon. Stay away from home inspections. Forget closing costs.
Right.
Depending on the loan type, make sure your folks understand what happens if it doesn't appraise and what they have to bring to the table, and make sure that you convey to the other agent that they're capable of doing that if necessary. Because when you start working with sellers, and Tiffany can relate to this, and Felicia can too, if you accept an offer and multiple offers, and then 2 weeks later it doesn't appraise, you're going to say, we were in multiple offers. We're not reducing the price. We were in multiple offers.
So then they got to pay up.
Right.
Yeah.
So make sure you're being very clear about that up front. And when you get to working with sellers and you get in that situation, before you accept an offer in a situation like that, you need to go ahead and set that expectation. Our clients are accepting your offer, but if it doesn't appraise, we're not coming down. We're in multiple offers. So as
So
your
as a list agent, you're saying say
client
that.
prepared to do that. Got it? Okay, cool. We're going to wrap up on multiple offers. Thanks for playing.